Hey friends, welcome to Real Life Conversations for Christian Coaches. I'm Teresa McCloy.
And I'm Erica Vinson. We're so glad that you're listening in. Here on the podcast, each week we want to have real conversations to help you grow a successful and sustainable coaching business, and yet still stay grounded in what truly matters.
We'll share practical tools and honest conversations and our own experiences as coaches, as well as invite some great guests on the show to support you as a coach to live from a place of rest, not rush.
So whether you're getting started or been coaching for years, you're in the right place. Let's dive into today's conversation.
I am so excited that we're bringing in guests. Lindsay Sterchi is with us today. Lindsay is actually a part of the REALIFE Process Team, working more on the spiritual formation side of things, which we're going to dive into today. Lindsay, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to get to have all three of us, all of our voices in the room. We don't get to do that very often here on the podcast. And specifically today, we are going to talk around the idea of showing up as a coach. What does that really mean? How do we define that? And some of the language we're going to use today is, what is the path you're on in coaching? What do you feel that God has called you specifically to as a coach? And we hear this so much in the conversations that we have. We have been certifying coaches in our framework since 2020. So we've had a few conversations and certified several people in the world of coaching and spiritual direction. We've had a lot of conversations. One of the things we find so much is that people are like, what is it that I'm feeling called to? So I'd love to hear from each of you. Lindsay, we'll start with you as our guest today. How did you get on the path that you're on? As even, I believe the language you would use is a spiritual formation coach. What led you down that path?
For me, I've always had a lot of interest and passion around cultivating spiritual practices in my own everyday life. That's been a huge part of my story, learning how in different seasons, connection with God looks different. I've found that I love not only exploring that for myself, but helping others navigate that as well. When I think about how I work with people and how I can most help them, it's in that place of how you cultivate your life with God in a way that creates space for Him in your everyday life based on your current season, your personality, and all of those different things. I have a ministry background. I have a seminary degree. So my background is in that ministry spiritual space. And so as I have moved into working one-on-one with people, that really has felt life-giving and feels like the place that I feel called to meet with people.
And Erica, you and I shared a little bit of our coaching journey on the last podcast and maybe even the podcast before that, as we renamed the podcast to Real Life Conversations for Christian Coaches. I know you've given some context as to your journey, but even as you think about the path, and we're going to dive into giving some language to that today, what comes up for you when you think about the path you're on as a coach?
The path that I'm on as a coach is credited to the path I'm on as a client. I love creating ideas and strategies, but taking action and having commitment and accountability, I can get there a lot faster. It's about that consistent one foot in front of the other. I love being able to transfer some of that empowerment, encouragement, and equipping for others in the life and leadership space. It excites me, and I know it can be something that I can help others with as well. So it's why I love coaching.
The three of us lead our network community of coaches that we have, our Real Life Process community. And we just had that call this morning. We had one of our coaches in there speak about encouraging and equipping. And that's two of the words that I have in my own real life mission statement. I feel God calling me to encourage and equip others, which I think really aligns with how coaching is defined. And we're going to talk about that, but it is that not only do I show up and encourage, people told me I give great encouragement or great advice. That's another word, which is not a part of coaching. I think the heart of encouragement, and yet The second part of that is the actionable piece you just talked about, Erica, which is equipping and coming alongside someone to help equip them. So thank you both for sharing your stories and your journeys and the path that you feel that you're on right now, which I think is also a big deal. That doesn't mean 2 years from now, God may cross my path somewhere else and take me in a different direction. But let's dive in a little bit. And Erica, I'm going to ask you, when we think about coaching in general, before we choose a path, when we're building the road itself, what's the foundation of the path? Give us a little bit of that coaching definition, and then we'll dive in a little deeper.
Coaching is both an art and a practice, which is hopeful because we can grow in it, but it's the art and practice of really enabling individuals and groups to move from where they are to where they want to be. So it's really about naming, where are you? Where do you want to go? And so that's the movement of coaching.
So a visual might be, I'm standing somewhere and I'm on this road and there are 3 ways I could go. Here I am as a coach, and I know I want to help people move forward. I want to equip, I want to encourage, and I'm standing here and I got 3 paths that I could choose. So we're going to define these in this way. There's a spiritual formation coaching path. I could choose that path as a way that I equip and encourage others. I could choose a life coach path and equip and encourage others in life coaching, or I could choose a leadership path and equip and encourage others in that way. Within our coaching community, we see 3 distinct paths that people are on and how they're showing up with others, encouraging and equipping. And we're going to start with life coaching. And we hope you see how these 3 distinct paths are just a little bit nuanced and different, but they all come from that foundation of helping someone move forward from where they are to where they want to be through encouragement and equipping. So, Erica, let's start with you and life coaching. What are some of the focuses in those conversations?
The first thing to remember is that you're coaching a whole person. Life coaching clients often come and may want to grow in self-awareness, or they might be in a season of transition where they're navigating what is the best next step. You use that word discerning, that I'm discerning, and I want to do that with a coach and have a thinking partner. How can I create a life really that matters and that I'm actually seeing my time and the people that I'm saying are important to me show up in my real life so that my calendar actually reflects what I value? Diving into needs and values is often work that life coaching will bring up and unearth. And that integrates too, those rhythms. We kind of think about this, all 3, leadership, spiritual formation, life, it all complements one another. And so the 3 things certainly can intersect, but often those are places that some life coaching clients begin.
I think that's so true. We had this whole conversation, the 3 of us, about these all intersect. It is hard to pull them apart because we're coaching a whole person. Yet for a client that's coming in and saying, this is the area I want to focus on, this is where I'm at right now, this is where I feel a little bit stuck. When we were talking there to Erica, I think of the process that we have and the 4 components of the REALIFE process, a framework for how a coach can show up with others. All of them intersect. I'm going to flip to you for just a second, Lindsay. When you hear life coaching, what shows up for you? How do you feel like that might be unique in its own way? What comes up for you when you hear that way of being with someone?
When I think about life coaching, I think about all the different areas in our life. In the process, we talk about identifying our areas of focus, where we have our relationships, we have our home, we have our friendships, our family, our work life. There are all these different areas of life. And so when I think about life coaching, I think about, who do I want to be in these different areas of life? And what do I need to do to get to where I want to be? Which is what Erica shared about the purpose of coaching. But I think about all the areas of my life and how I want to grow and what steps I can take to get there.
For our clients, that's helpful when we talk about the areas in their life and we give them language to identify those areas and say, maybe that is why I feel overwhelmed. Erica, when you think about showing up as a Christian coach I'll be honest, for a long time, I resisted saying, I'm a Christian coach. It's even funny as we've changed the name of the podcast to be real transparent, because I always think of myself, I'm a coach who happens to be a Christian. And so I hope that light and that way that I show up comes through, whether I'm coaching someone who is a believer or not. They didn't hire me for that reason. But yet, as you think about showing up as a believer, what might that change about even any of these paths that we might choose?
It gives our clients an idea of the foundation that we're starting from when we're serving them. You may be coaching someone who is on a faith journey, who is a Christian or has professed faith, and you may not. And so it's not a prerequisite, but it certainly, and even ethically, when we go back to the code of ethics, those types of things as coaches and look at and say, this actually helps my clients know who I am and what place I'm coming from.
I agree. So that's another part of moving into showing up as a coach, these paths, and there's more paths than this. We're going to talk about 3, but there are other paths you could take in coaching. Am I showing up with that as a distinct description of the kind of coaching I do? Am I a Christian leadership coach? Am I a Christian life coach? Spiritual formation is obvious one as we talk about that, but how much distinction and clarity do I need? Let's think about using the road analogy. What are the guardrails that I have along the side that I want to say, this is the way that I show up with my clients in that ethical part of things? Let's talk a little bit about leadership coaching and that path, because it's similar to life coaching, but there are some unique differences.
Teresa, share with us a few of what might be some of the distinctions if someone were to see life and leadership, to help them even go, how would I discern which of these paths might be for me?
I think in the leadership space, some of the things, it's obvious if you tear apart the word, right? Lead. As we were talking off record, we're all leading in some capacity. We're leading in our homes. We're leading in relationships. Leadership is everywhere. But I think the distinction that we might make here is you're coaching around helping others grow, many times in a professional space. When you're doing leadership coaching, they're growing in their influence and how they lead others effectively. They might be doing that to grow in their career, to be able to take a position at another level. They might be at a leadership level where there's people over them and people under them. So there's emotional intelligence. There might be team development. In leadership coaching, you might use assessments and maybe even some team assessments if you're working with an entire team. So there's conflict resolution, vision casting. In the real life process, we talk about defining your talents, your gifts, and your abilities. When I think about leadership coaching too, many times it's a person that is coming to coaching either for their own or because their organization has said, we want to give you coaching so that you can develop your abilities, see maybe what's not seen and move forward. Again, similar to life coaching, but yet has some distinctions in the way you as a coach might show up and what tools you might want in your tool belt. I think some of what we're talking about here is, what abilities have I developed as a coach that I might bring to the clients that are on this path? I don't know. Lindsay, any thoughts you have in that leadership coach approach?
To me, it seems like if someone is needing coaching around leadership, it's very focused on doing. And again, like we've talked about, these are all connected. You're still going to need to cultivate your being and who you are to support the doing. What is the goal we have in mind in our time together is to develop their ability as a leader and how they're showing up in a professional capacity related to their work and their organization. That is really the focus of what the coaching is about.
And it doesn't mean you might not, as a coach, show up and you might get into a conversation about their being side, and because that will influence their doing. So there is fine lines on these paths. They are running side by side. In my mind, I'm picturing an interstate, right? There's lanes running beside each other. but there are some nuances. And if you're listening in and you've been doing some coaching, this may be bringing up for you just even like, how do I want to narrow my lane a little bit and go, wow, if I brought some different tools in, if I focused in this way, if I use different language, how much would it help me to know how I show up as my best coaching self and clarity for my clients in even hiring me as a coach? So we've talked life coaching briefly. We've talked leadership coaching. So let's talk about a new kind of language to me that we have seen develop, and we have seen a lot of people say, I want to be a Christian life coach. Sometimes I feel like the desire that we see and hear is, I really want to coach with people around their deeper relationship with God. Lindsay, going back to your own story and what you're seeing, what is a spiritual formation coach?
The focus of this type of coaching really is on your relationship with God. And when you're talking with someone about that, you're going to specifically look at the spiritual rhythms and practices that person has to create space for their life with God. We know that spiritual practices are not the end goal. That is a means to an end, that we order and align our days in a way that makes space for God to do what only He can do. When you are meeting with someone as a spiritual formation coach, you are talking about listening to God and what God's invitation is for their life, and inviting them to respond to God's invitation in the way that they order and align their days.
Such a good description. Could we do that in life coaching? Yes. Especially if we're working with someone, we could pull in some of those tools and ways of being. In fact, that's exactly what the real life process does. The real life process is coming from that place of, who am I being? How am I living? And what am I doing? So you've heard us talk about all three of those ways of being, doing, and living. They're all unique, and yet they form our whole self. What I have found in the last few years, as I observe the coaching industry and am connected to some coaching schools and in the work we're doing with certifying people in our unique framework, is that so many Christian coaches, it would be helpful if we just named the path that we were on. If we said, what I want to do is listen to people and their stories. I see this unique. And so many people come in and go, I want to help people as they walk in their story. And what's the path that I feel that God has for me right now? Is it in this listening through practice and how God is showing up, recognizing that? Is it through helping people with these are the areas in your life? Here's the focus from a life coach perspective. Here you are in your doing and you're leading others. And man, I love walking alongside people who are leading and doing others. Again, just to clarify as listeners for you, these are not the only paths, but these are the paths that we have identified here at the REALIFE Process that we see our coaches on, and we see them showing up and shining the light of their faith within these three areas. So I think it's helpful just to define that path and say what that path is.
I think so much of it is paying attention to where your client is and what they are desiring to focus on. If they are wanting to cultivate their life with God, as a coach, I know that is going to touch every area of their life. If they come in with an issue of a decision, a big life decision, and they want life coaching, you know that's going to touch into their being in their life with God. And it's also going to impact their leadership. So all of them are going to be present, but I think it's a question of, how do I meet my client where they're at, and where are we going to start from, and what is our focus going to be?
I think about that agreement that we make with a client when we first come in and say, hey, I want to do coaching. What are you thinking? And then what's the path we're going to be on? So that's one side of it, right? Is the path for the client. Erica, I think as you're setting up a coaching business, choosing a path is going to be helpful.
Absolutely. I was thinking of this metaphor. Sometimes we feel like we're off-roading, right? Sometimes we're on the country road and we're like, oh, this is a scenic route. Now I might be on the highway where I'm trying to navigate. And then there's a different feeling when we get on the interstate and the path is open and clear. We might even put cruise control on. And I don't know that we ever, with humility, hit cruise to go, oh, I'm comfortable in this lane. But where do we find that energy to go, this is the thing that I love, and I feel free when I'm engaging with clients in this way. And knowing that we are coaching whole people is freeing. All three of these pieces are going to integrate as we're working with clients, whether it's the spiritual formation piece, whether it's primarily life coaching, or whether we're starting with leaders going, I know there's a life piece underneath there that you as a leader might not even be aware of. And there's actually an even deeper place of spiritual rhythms that, man, if you got there as a leader, it could enhance all of who you are. So it's really about paying attention to what in your story helps you to understand the why of where you are. And then how do you continue to show up in a place that just gives you that life-giving energy to continue to show up with clients and make an impact.
Yeah, I agree. And there is so many directions, and you're going to hear more about this as we have these conversations about coaching. But we wanted to come here because I think another whole part of this conversation is posture. I've had people say to me before, when I'm showing up more as a spiritual formations coach, and I have clients, that has been the agreement, I have a different, even sometimes physical posture and pace to my voice when I'm working in my leadership coaching or my life coaching. So there's so many nuances to this path that you choose. Some of it is about, what am I saying externally? What do I believe in confidently? That I mostly work with leaders in my coaching, which gives you a lane, it gives you a path, but it's also part of that internal when you're with the client in the moment and they want to talk about that. And you know that, oh, wow, we're shifting more to a spiritual formation place. Maybe I need to ask the client, is that where they want to go? Or do they want to do a different call about that? There's so many nuances to this, but for this purpose of this podcast, these are three paths we want to invite you to explore and be a part of. We have some ways that you could explore these paths with us in our coaching community. So we've talked about these three paths: spiritual formation, coaching, life coaching, leadership coaching. It might have created some curiosity for you. Maybe there's a path that really resonates with you. Maybe you're still figuring out, how do I want to show up? So wherever you are on the journey, we really want to invite you to something special that we have coming up this summer. We're launching a brand new summer coaching cohort for our certification in our process. We believe that the tools and the framework of the real life process can help any coach on these three paths. We have certified over 80 different coaches around the world, and we've seen them choose these paths.
As part of the summer cohort, you're going to receive access to the full real life process framework. It works in all three areas that we just talked about, plus some practical tools. And you mentioned getting permission from your clients. So this works even in an ICF credentialed model, where you have permission to use these tools and the resources with your clients to enhance their growth. In using those frameworks with individuals, you can use them with groups or teams. If you're already credentialed, we're excited that we can offer you ICF CCEs. You can actually get 13 core competency credits and 7 resource developments. That's a total of 20 hours or credits that you can walk forward with as a part of the cohort. And you're really going to get a supportive community of faith-based coaches. One of the things we constantly hear is, I came for the content, I stay for the community. There's nothing like being able to collaborate in this space. You're not alone. Most of all, we're excited just for you to experience a way for your clients and yourself to live from rest, not rush. That's one of the mantras, Teresa. Do what matters, live from rest, not rush. You were just sharing that with our coaches this morning.
And something that we are really excited about with this cohort that is new and distinct is that as we've talked about these different paths, we are going to have time in our live training calls where you will go into a breakout room with other people who are on the same path as you. So whether you are on the spiritual formation path or the life and leadership coaching path, you're going to have a breakout time to be with others so that you can talk about, how do I use the framework and the tools in the way that I uniquely show up with others? We are always learning and growing. And as we've certified our coaches and our framework, we've learned that the best way to grow your business is to choose a path, to decide, here's how I feel called to show up. And we are excited to give you a unique opportunity to learn how that might look for you.
Yeah, we are excited about the clarity that we continue to have from our experience of doing this for almost 5 years, helping other coaches grow their coaching businesses through the framework of the real life process. One of the biggest things is, how am I going to show up with clients? We know these 3 unique paths are ways you can do it, and you'll get some crossover training. Even if you choose one path, it's not like you're not going to learn about the 2 others, but you get to have conversations specifically with Erica and in the life and leadership, Lindsay in the spiritual formation path. Best way to find out more is to go to thereallifeprocess.com. We spell real life with 1 L. So thereallifeprocess.com/get certified. And you can find out more details, find out a way to connect with one of us, even about a further conversation if you have questions. It's all starting on July 29th. So if you're listening to this in real time, about 6 weeks from now, we'll be kicking off this next cohort and limiting the space on the summer cohort so that we can try out these new paths, pray and discern about, would this be helpful for you as a life coach, as a leadership coach, as a spiritual formation coach? Thank you for joining us today. Erica, Lindsay, thanks for being on. It's always good to be in conversation with both of you. With your gifts and talents and abilities, it takes a village, and I'm blessed to work with both of you. Remember, friends, that every ordinary day has an extraordinary moment. You just have to look for them, and enjoy coaching this week.